Last night my brother and his wife live here locally, so I had dinner with them, and I had a couple of beers over here at Hattrick's, and I came back and I walked in the hotel and I heard all this noise, and I went over and looked in and I said, my God, they're having a freak show here. And then it dawned on me, it was the first ever landlord-tenant get-together where they're having a party. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce Dave Borden. How many people have ever been to West Point, to the military academy at West Point? You've been up on Saturday, you've seen the parade that they do out on the parade grounds. Very impressive. And at West Point and the Air Force Academy and the Naval Academy, they specialize in teaching two things. They specialize in teaching leadership and determination. Because if you don't have determination, you're not going to get through the program with everything that you have to. By the way, they don't have the 5-year program there. You start and you finish in 4 years. I got a boy at Auburn, Alabama right now. I'm trying to get that idea embedded into him. But when you go to the military academy, you learn leadership and determination. And long after you leave military service, you're still going to need that. Dave Borden is a second-generation property manager from Colorado Springs. And after he attended West Point, he served in the Army as a helicopter pilot, flying the big Chinooks. That's the airplane with the two rotors on it. Looks like a flying banana. And after he left the Army, he worked for his mother in their property management business for 3 years. During his tenure at Peak Property Services, David started RentClicks.com. How many people remember RentClicks.com? which is now Rentals.com. During his tenure at RentClicks, as RentClicks president and CEO, the business was the first to become NARPM's official partner and went on to win NARPM's National Affiliate Award 4 times. During his free time, David enjoys traveling, playing football, and playing baseball with his 6 and 8-year-old sons. David Borden.
Thank you. That's a very kind introduction. What Dave forgot to tell you is I graduated the top 90% of my class. I flew Chinooks because that's what they gave all the guys that couldn't fly the Apaches, and a couple other things. But one thing he didn't tell you about the Air Force is all of the service. We all have rivalries. We like to talk about what's tougher and who's is harder. The Air Force guys don't talk. They brag about how much easier it is. So when they build an Army base, we put up rifle ranges and training grounds, and then when we're out of money, we don't get air conditioning. When they're at the Air Force, they put up their officers club and they build a golf course, and then they're like, Congress, we don't have any runways. We cannot have an air base without runways. So they that's the difference between the Air Force and the other services. Is that pretty close? See, they don't deny it either. That's
Absolutely correct. We're smarter than that.
You know what? There's a lot of truth to that. And I grew up right across the street from the Air Force Academy and still went to West Point, because I couldn't get in. Anyway, all right. So today we're going to talk a little bit about web excellence. And Dave gave me my introduction before my property management career, and then in 2000. I did go into business with my mom in property management, and I did grow up as a son of property managers, and I think that's part of what gives me a little bit of the passion to be in this industry all the time. I got to see them struggle with their Commodore 64 and writing out their handwritten statements and things like that, and I always wanted to think there might be a better way to do things. So I actually, I worked with my mom for 3 years, and that gave me a lot of understanding of what goes on for property managers day to day, how difficult the business is, how time-consuming it is, how tough it is to make a profit, and it makes me passionate about what we do and about helping property managers do that better. During my tenure there, the rental market went from being very good, we were using the newspaper and getting everything rented easily, to being very bad. And I was simply looking for another place to advertise, and I couldn't find one. So we started RentClicks. I started with a couple West Point classmates of mine. They were a lot smarter than me. These guys are smarter than me too, except for Blake. So anyway, but my time there, I got to learn a lot about tenant behavior online and how property managers interact and what owner investors do online. And when I went back to consult with them in 2008, I decided, you know what, I kind of want to get back into this. This is fun. This is what I do best. I really like this part. And so I started a company called The Free Rental Site, which I'm the president of. And as we were building that business, we noticed a big need in the industry for websites. And we launched property manager websites and The Free Rental Site, and that's where we are now. And what the goal of what we're going to talk about today and through our progression in building our business is we want you to stop looking, kind of fundamentally change the way you think about your website. You know, it's either a liability or it's an asset. Okay, if it doesn't bring in money for you, it's a liability. It's something that you have to pay to have hosted, and something you have to pay somebody either time or money to update all the time, or it could be an asset. And when I left my mom's property management company, I helped her sell it to one of my customers in Colorado Springs, and she got one time her revenue. All right, so she'd worked for 15, 20, my folks separated, but she worked for 15 years, and she sold her business for one-time revenue. Okay, and that's fairly standard out in the property management industry if you sell your accounts to someone. A lot of times that's how much money you'll get. Got a couple seats up here, ladies. Don't be afraid, I won't bite. But and that, you know, that's good, but you know, for a lot of you that might not be enough for you to retire on. And when I built my business, my internet business, we sold that for 8 times the revenue. Okay, so that's, and the point I'm trying to get across is that an asset is something that adds value either while you're running the business or to it if you want to leave the business. It's something that you can get a lot more money out of. So if you have a property management company with a bunch of accounts, that's worth a certain amount of money. But if you have a website that's constantly generating new business, making your business more efficient, constantly helping you rent your properties faster, that's an asset. And if you have an asset, that's significantly more valuable. Okay, and by the way, this is an interactive conversation here. So if you have questions, please ask me, because I have a tendency to get going a little bit too fast, and I pretend like I understand this stuff. But sometimes, you know, I want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So don't be afraid to slow me down or stop me. Okay, and the best way to turn your website into an asset is to get found. When people are doing searches, they need to find your company. They need to find, when a person out there does a search for what you do as a business, a property manager in Orlando or Atlanta or wherever you're from, they need to find your company in order to do business with you. They are not going to accidentally find your website. You give them their card, they might find you. They check your sign, they'll find you. But a lot more and more people are finding you through search. Does anyone know what search engine optimization is? Hands? Matt, what do you know? I'm calling you out. Sorry.
That's fine. I mean, it's a structure of your website that allows you to be seen by several different people in several different areas.
Wrong.
Okay.
No, he's exactly right. All it is the process of making your site visible for what you want it to be visible for, the term that you want, the series of terms that you want. And in your case, it's all about property management. That's what you guys do. And there's a lot of people out there that are being found that are apartment companies or investment firms for our terms, and we're gonna put an end to that. I mean, if someone's looking for property managers, I want to make sure they find you guys. Okay, there are an estimated 300 algorithmic changes just by Google every 6 months. It's very difficult to keep up with. As the skills that are associated with property management and internet skills are often not overlapping. They're significantly different. I mean, you guys are out talking to customers and putting out fires and trying to get new business, but it's not the same language as making your website speak to Google and tell it what you do. And that's what we're going to talk a lot about today. And the reason we're doing this is because I have tons of people come up to me all the time and say, hey Dave, I need a social media strategy, and I need it right now. And I'm like, okay, well, let's take a look at your website and your title tags and your structure. And then when I go look at it and I see that their title tag says homepage, it's time to take a little bit of a step back and make sure that your website is your foundation for the social media efforts that you're going to do. I firmly believe in social media. I think it's going to be the future. But if your website is not fundamentally sound, it has to be the hub of everything that you do. It has to have all of your content, and it needs to go out. There's 694,000 searches conducted every second on Google. So every second that goes by that your business is not optimized, not competing for those types of terms, you're missing out on potential business. It's out there, especially right now. Right now is one of the best times we've had for property management. People can't sell their homes, so they're renting them. You know, a lot of people are moving from the home ownership category back into the rental market. And it's a really, really good time, as most of you can probably attest, to be in property management. I'm guessing that most of you, through referrals alone, are gaining quite a bit of new properties. So, but then a lot of people say, well, you know, Dave, I'll just pay for it. I'll just pay for search, okay? That's one way to do it, and you will get traffic that way, and you will get new business that way. But 88% of people don't even click on the paid links. So if you look on the screen, the paid links, as most of you know, are on the top and along the side. Where you really need to be are the organic search results. That's where 88% of the traffic lands. So even if you're paying for it, even if you're paying way more than all of your competitors, you're still missing out on 90% of the potential traffic if that's your entire strategy is to pay for it. Not only that, but if you do the things that we're about to talk about to your website, your paid campaigns are going to be significantly more effective and cost you less money because Google, their goal is to show results to their users that are the most relevant and the best so that they'll keep coming back. So they don't go over to Yahoo and Bing or Ask Jeeves, okay? So, go ahead.
I have a question. Can you go back to the other screen just one second?
Yeah.
We have paid links on the top and paid links on the side.
Yes, ma'am.
What decides whether you're in the top or on the side? Because I would guess the paid links on the top would be more seen than the paid links on the side.
That's not necessarily true. As a general rule, that's true. That is an algorithm that Google uses, and a lot of it is what I just talked about as far as the relevance factor goes. Just because you're paying for search traffic doesn't mean Google's going to show it, because your page might not be relevant for that search term. If you are a property manager and you're advertising for ball bearings, they may not want to show your site very often, okay? So where they place you in there is where Google feels like they can make the most impact on their users. So if you're on the far right, you may not get as much traffic, or you may get the most traffic there. I mean, it depends. It depends on the search term and who clicks where. They have a lot more. I'm not going to be able to explain that whole algorithm to you, but I'll take a stab at it. So anyway, again, making your site relevant and the pages relevant for search is going to help your paid campaigns. It's going to help you compete organically, all that stuff. It all kind of ties together. All right, and a lot of what we see out there is people, there's been a really good effort made on the site to try to get certain terms, but we're going to teach you how to be a lot more specific. Like, a lot of you might think that it would be really cool to show up #1 on property management or property managers. There's 500 million search results on Bing for that term, and 76 million on Yahoo or on Google. So I didn't even know there were 500 million property management companies, but apparently there are. But the good news is you don't really want that term, and we'll get into that a little bit later. You may want, you know, if you're a big national company, you may want that term, but for a local company, you probably don't want anything to do with that term. Is my clicker working? All right, so basically Google has in effect replaced the phone book, and you know, we still use them. This is our development staff. That's what John does all day. So that's the O Club here. So, but here's the deal. Google has effectively replaced the phone book, but if you're not being found for those searches, all your competitors are getting all that business. So people are still looking for property managers. Just because they don't use the phone book anymore does not mean that they're not looking anymore. It means that they're finding whoever comes up in those results, and if it's not you, if it's somebody else, they're hiring somebody else in a lot of cases. Okay, where's the human slide? Okay. All right, so there's certain things. A SERP is called a search engine results page. We'll get a little bit more in detail on what we talked about with the paid links and everything. This is where we get a little bit more in depth on it. Like I said, if you have questions along the way, let me know. There's hundreds of factors that go into a search algorithm, okay? And the goal for the search engines is to provide its users the best content. And the way it can do it, and however good of a job the search engines do with that, means they get more people that visit their search engine instead of someone else's. All right, now what goes into those search results? There's a lot of factors. These are what we think are the most prominent, okay? Google is smart now, and they know where your search is coming from. So if someone's searching for an Orlando property manager in Orlando, it's going to be a lot different than if somebody's searching for them in Denver. So Google knows your location. And we're going to talk about Google Places a little bit later too, if you have to get that set up if you haven't already. It takes into account the geographic location of a searcher, because if I'm in Orlando and I'm searching for something, my results are probably different than someone searching in Puerto Rico or Texas or Africa. So the historical performance of your website. What happens when somebody finds your website or your content? Do they sit there for 3 seconds and leave? Do they go click through 50 pages and devour all of the content on your site? Or do they look at, do they bounce off immediately? And the search engines use that data that they track to see what's happening when people find a result. Okay, and if the results are good according to their algorithm, then they'll move your site up higher. If they're bad, they'll drop you down further away. The content on the site, and we're going to teach you how to do really good content today. There's content for humans, there's content for machines, and the machines need to know what kind of content you have. And we'll also get a little more detail as far as taking some of your pictures and your photos, what you're going to call your URL, things like that to help you get more relevant for search. Those are a lot of the on-site factors. Then you have links that come into your site. That's bigger and bigger and bigger all the time. The quality of those links, who's sending it to you? Is it a big company? Is it a little company? Is it a great website? How's the link structured? We're going to get into all this stuff today. We'll get into most of it. Usually we get through about 30 or 40% of this presentation. And then how you build your site has a lot to do. Are you cross-browser compatible? Is it fast? What happens when people navigate? Okay, so like we talked about, the search engines are trying to give their users the best results. And as most of you know, the leader in the search space is Google. Okay, so if I talk about, a lot of times I'll say Google and it's kind of generic for search engines, kind of like Coke is for soda. And the reason for that is, it's actually a verb now. You go Google something. You don't actually go out and ask Jeeves something. I mean, they keep telling me to pull that joke out. I like it. I love it. So, anyway. All right, so we talk about the search engine. This is the core of it. It seems so very difficult, but it's actually relatively easy. There's only 2 things that go into your rank. And what your rank is that's where you show up. If someone types in a search for Tampa property management, where do you show up? If you're number 3, that's your rank. Okay, what went into that rank? There's only 2 things. There's relevance and there's authority. Now those 2 things there's a lot of things that go into each of those, but that's all. How relevant is the content on your site, and how authoritative is it to the rest of the internet and the rest of the world? Those are the only 2 things that go into it, okay? The good news there is that on the relevance part of it, you can control 100% the relevance that goes on your site. And the authority, that's what happens with other people out there linking to you, how they link to you. That's a lot harder to control. It's a lot harder to manage. And that's why I want to make sure that everyone has a solid foundation for the relevance portion before they go out and try to get a bunch of links. Because your linking strategy is not going to be as good if you don't have a good relevant content on your site. Matt?
Where do you dig up the ranking?
You just go to Google and type it in, or there's some services out there where you can type in a search term and it'll go out and kind of check all the search engines. There's a product called Rankerizer, RANKERIZER. You can go throw in any search term at it with any URL, and that'll tell you where that particular website stands for that particular search. Okay, and I'll show you some of those. Okay, so rank is all it is a measure of your relevance and your authority based on that particular search engine's algorithm. The bottom line is search engines are trying all the time to think like humans. Okay, the main problem is that right now they can't. I see it in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. They may be able to think in a way that you guys don't have to do all of this on-site optimization and make your site relevant. But until then, you're going to have to do that to talk to their computer program, because although they want to be humans, they're not, okay? We talked earlier about the term property management, property managers. And like I said before, there's a lot, I've seen a lot of websites where people, I can tell they've put an effort in there, they put in property management, they put in property managers, but those terms are not as good for you. The more local, the more long tail, I know you've heard this term from people before, the more terms that people type into their search, the better quality of a search that is. So if someone's typing in property management and they're in Texas and you're working in Florida, they're of no use to you unless you have an office in Texas, which a lot of, most people probably don't. Okay, so you are not really interested in that search, because even if you come up high on that, it's going to waste a lot of your time. There is a lot of search volume there. So you would be much more interested in Orlando property management or Winter Haven property management. Is that right, Winter Haven?
Winter Park.
Oh, sorry. I tried.
There is a winner here. There is one there.
Ah, there you go. Okay. So you want Winter Haven property management. Winter Haven property management companies. Companies that manage rental property in Orlando, Florida, things like that. Now those search volumes aren't going to be as high, but they're going to be so much more relevant to you. And the odds are that if 5 of those people type in that term and visit your site, probably 2 or 3 of them are going to hire you, versus if 1,000 people typed in property management land on your site, 1 or 2 of them might hire you, except that you have to wade through the other 998 that didn't. So we want focused, converting, important keywords, much more so than we want these broad general terms that have a lot of search volume. That may sound appealing because there's a lot of searches, but it's not going to help you grow your business. Matt?
So when you see these websites, they got on the right side, they got search terms, all just down on the right side.
Right.
I would assume it has to be somewhat bad. It's just too generic.
That's a great segue, Matt. I think you should come up here and give this. No, we're about to get into the content. We're going to talk very specifically about that question. Yes, you do not want to have, you don't want to throw all of your content onto one page, because Google likes niche specific content, and that's what they want to give, because that's what their users want. And for their users to continue to come back, that content's got to be excellent, okay? So a lot of you have probably heard the phrase that content is king, and it is, but more specifically, excellent content is king. Great content that humans love is king. And then when you turn that content that's great for humans into content that Google and other search engines and machines and computer programs can read, that's when you start getting relevant. And like I said, there's relevance and there's authority. We'll talk about authority later, but relevance is something that you have 100% control of, and it starts with your content, okay? The good news is, all of you are already property managers, so you already have tons of great content. I mean, it's what we do. You're not trying to trick anyone, you're not trying to fool anyone, you're a property manager, okay? So it works. You don't have to make a bunch of stuff up and try to trick Google into thinking that you're relevant, because you're already relevant. A lot of you have 500, 1,000, 1,500 properties. You've been doing business in the market for 10, 15, 20, 30 years. That's relevant. That's what Google and search engines want to show people. But you have to help them along a little bit. Every property manager has rental listings, services page. You talk about all the stuff that you do. There's tons of stuff that you do on a daily basis. And most websites have kind of these elements built into them. You got a home page. Your home page is it's a traffic cop. It needs to get people where they're going. If someone's looking to hire you, get them to that content. If someone's looking for rental listings, get them to that content. If they're an existing customer that you already have that needs to pay rent or log in and check their statement, get them to that content. That does 2 things. Number one, it reduces your bounce rate, which one of the things that we talked about earlier is the on-site elements of what happens when the searches get to your site, and when humans get to your site, what do? If they leave and your bounce rate's high, that's going to make your ranking go down, because the search engines are going to consider you not as relevant. If you stay there and click through to something else, the search engines can assume that you found the content you were looking for and that you've interacted with it and that it was a relevant result. Does that make sense? Okay.
I think it's important to note too that each landing page is actually looked at as its own unique website.
Correct.
Really important, so that's your chance to make each landing page specific for like Winter Park, Winter Haven. You can have direct landing pages that will be more relevant on Google because they're specific mini websites versus trying to cram
That's right.
everything on one page.
If you try to tell Google that you're in Orlando, Winter Park, come on, help me out with some more.
Sanford, Hillsborough.
Yes, keep going, keep going. Yeah, okay. If you try to put all that stuff on the front page, you've just diluted yourself for all of it. Okay? You haven't told the search engines that you're relevant for any one specific thing. You just tell them that we do all this stuff, and that doesn't help them. Because, like I said, they're a computer program. You have to talk to their computer program if you want to be relevant. Okay? I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
There's been some conversation at the last meetings about people using what they call gateway sites. Say property management, tenant property management. And when you click on those, you go over to the homepage. My marketing guy says, Google looks at that kind of stuff and he thinks you're trying to be tricky. They downgrade you. Is that right? Right.
Yeah, that goes back to what Matt was saying. People just having relevant keywords and stuffing them onto a page so that Google knows that, they're getting a lot smarter, and you will actually get penalized big time. So if you're just throwing up keywords, that kind of question, on a page that is not legible to a human, that is just trying to attract robots or a search engine, then it's likely that person will get in trouble at some point and get knocked out of the ranking for that. So yeah, those tactics are recognized. Google and search engines are getting smarter and smarter, and they realize a lot of that stuff is tactics to try
Don't use gateway sites.
I wouldn't. I don't think it's a good practice. I think the best practice is to have excellent content that humans can understand, and then to build it to be relevant, and then put it out to other sites that you don't control, and try to get them to pick it up and link back to you. That's the ultimate authority. I mean, if you have, like I said, I'm going to take you through relevance. We're going to make you 100%. I'm going to show you how to make a page 100% relevant. Okay, that you can control. You can do that. That's in your power as the person that controls your website. The authority stuff, it's a lot less, it's not as guaranteed. It's going to take time. It's a lot more uncertain. You can't make somebody link to you, okay? So start out with great content that humans love, make it readable by machines, and then get it out to the rest of the world and let them pick it up. But again, the good news is that this is what you guys do. It's not like you're trying to get shifty and tricky and create stuff that you, because this is your business. It's what you do every single day. You guys probably, people ask, well, what should I do for content? You probably answer 5 questions a day from your customers, from your tenants, that if you actually wrote it down, your answer, and blogged it, it would be great content, okay? So I mean, you don't have to sit around, what do I do? If someone calls you and says, hey, I'd really like to hire you because my tenant's not paying his rent, what do I do? Record your conversation and write down the highlights, and that's great content, okay? And then sprinkle in some Orlando property management. I'm an Orlando property manager, and we're about to get into that. So rather than having the generic throwing up of everything that you do to people, we're going to start honing it in and getting specific. And we're going to talk about on-page SEO. This is relevance. Remember, 2 factors: relevance, authority. Relevance, you get to control. This is completely in your hands. You can do whatever you want with your relevance, okay? And we're going to talk about how to do that better. If I say okay too many times, just like yell okay, thank you. Okay, that was a half joke. That was a mistake disguised as a joke. So instead of building a content page that is general, and I am a property manager, I do property management, I manage homes, I want everybody to start thinking of themselves as not a property manager anymore, but pick your market: Orlando, Tampa, wherever you're trying to get your business. I'm an Orlando property manager. I'm a Tampa property manager. I'm a Sarasota property manager, whatever it might be. And here's why. When you go and write about what you do to try to attract people to hire you, you can tell them, I do property management. I've been doing it for 35 years. I manage 800 properties. I'm the best. I do this stuff, okay? That's good for a human being to figure out what you do. Because I found your site. I live in Florida. I live in Orlando. You live in Orlando. I can figure out as a human that you're an Orlando property manager, okay? So the content that you write is great. Now, we have to start speaking Googleese. Google does not understand that you're in Orlando and they're in Orlando unless you tell them. So instead of making a page that talks about your property management services, make a page that talks about your Orlando property management services, your Tampa property management services. This does not ruin it for the humans, okay? They can still see that you do property management and that you do it in Tampa, or that you do it in Orlando, but now Google can also see that you do it in Orlando. Before, all they thought is you were a property manager, and that lumped you in with the other 500 million results that they have. But now you're an Orlando property manager, and there's only 2 or 3 million results, which still sounds daunting, but it's really, if you're a company that's been doing property management in Orlando for a long time, you've got a really good shot at those terms, and you should, and Google wants you in those terms. So what you do is you take your great human content that you wrote for human beings to understand what you do, and you add your market into it. So instead of saying, I do property management, I do Orlando property management. That's the first step. So now we're talking Google now. We're done talking human. The human part's the easy part because our brains can figure out. The machines can't figure that out. They have to be guided and directed right to it. So we're done talking human, now we're talking Google. We took your great content, we sprinkled it in your market. Now the next thing we can do, and I'm going to guess that almost everybody does this incorrectly. Your URL is your website. Okay, it's just the name of your website.com. Your front page, it's got content on it. My guess is that most of you probably have a page built that you're trying to attract new clients on. And that page is called something. In this case, this is an Alaska property manager, so I hope they're not here today. I figured they wouldn't be at this show. But I don't know the last time somebody searched for web/AR416082-custom blah, blah, blah. You get to choose the name of this page. And I suggest if you're in Orlando, you call this page Orlando-property-management. Not because a human needs to know that you're an Orlando property manager, but because Google does. Okay, well, like I said, we're not talking about humans anymore. We're talking about a machine, a computer program that we have to talk to and tell them what we do. We already told the humans, then we sprinkled in some content so the machines could see that our content has to do with Orlando. Now we're going to call our services page Orlando Property Management so that machine now knows that when I go to this page, this is what it's about. So that when somebody keys in Orlando Property Management, who's the most relevant? Who has the most authority? If you've put great human content in with Orlando sprinkled in, you change your URL name to Orlando Property Management, you are more relevant than the guy that didn't do that already. Your relevance is already much better than the competitor that hasn't done that. There you go. So there's an example of the correct URL structure. Now you have, does this look familiar to you? So, now you have even further opportunities to tell the machine what this page is about. How relevant is this page for someone that typed in Orlando Property Management? You wrote good human content, you sprinkled in your market, you named your URL. Now, nobody wants to come to a page that's completely full of text. They want to see some pictures and things like that. And you also have a chance within the code of your website to call your pictures whatever you want. So here we have some pictures of some people hanging out. Instead of calling this middle one here, happy couple with a kid, .jpeg, we can call it Orlando Property Management.jpg. And then there's also a portion of that picture within your code called an alt tag where you can describe what it is. Instead of saying couple holding child, you can say Atlanta Property Managers. The bottom line is Google knows that that's a picture, but they can't see it and look at what it is. So tell them what it is. And if you tell them that it's Orlando Property Manager, you just increased your relevance even more on your page, even more than the next guy. So if you've done great human content, sprinkled in your market, changed your URL, added some photos that are alt tagged properly, now that page is way more relevant than your competitor who threw in property management and called it /services and didn't take the time and effort to name their pictures. Next part, this is the tagging. There's, this is stuff that human beings can't even see. This is behind the scenes on your website code. And this is another opportunity to tell search engines and computers what you do. Okay, so we've taken all of those content elements, we've changed the page to the right name, we've taken our pictures. Now this is tagging. Is everyone familiar with meta tagging? Title tagging? This is your opportunity. Yeah, what's that?
No, I said we're starting to get into the.
Yes, this is what Google looks at. To the title tag section of your website is your chance to specifically tell Google what this page is. What terms should this page come up for when your searchers search?
David,
Yes,
say
ma'am.
things, page properties, that in my website, I click on it and it says page properties and it gives me a blank.
John? John's my business partner developer. He's way smarter, a little bit smarter than I am.
No, not at all. Who are you using for your
Yahoo
website?
site.
Yahoo site, I haven't used that in years. And each content management system, in your case Yahoo, may or may not give you access to control some of this. And it's been a long time, so I can't answer that. We could look at it after this if you'd like. But there should be a spot that will allow you to control your title tags, your meta description, your keywords. And this information is very specific for Google, and you should be doing some of that stuff. So unfortunately, without seeing Yahoo Site Builder, I don't know for sure. But things like WordPress, they have plugins you can give to WordPress that allow you to control this stuff. And most of the newer content management systems will allow you to do that. So.
Good answer. Most of this you can do yourself. Sometimes you're going to have to send an email or call your person who does your site and tell them to change the stuff, and you're gonna irritate them. But this is property management specific stuff that you need to do to be competitive, and you need to be persistent and adamant about it.
I'll just be irritating myself.
Okay, well, there you go. So your title tags, this is where you get to say Google. If somebody searches